This week is another milestone on the road to the 53-man roster and the start of the 2024 regular season as the Texans travel to Pittsburgh. We're going to talk about that and more on this edition of the Bullpen. Hello and welcome to the Bullpen. I'm James Roy, and as always with me is Tom Chavarria. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm so ready for Pittsburgh. I'm so ready for maybe the ones. See some starter action. Let's go.
Let's go. I'm ready for it. Hopefully not too much, CJ. I think if there's one group of players I don't care if I see all preseason, it's probably CJ Stroud in the top 3 in the wide receiver room. I wouldn't mind seeing a little run. I think we might see Joe Mixon. There was a tweet he put hey, it's my turn. I think he's coming back to practice this week. Based off of that, I have no inside sources and no information that's not available to the public to tell you otherwise why I believe what I believe. But hey, I mean, maybe I'm just speaking it into existence. I'm going to manifest a Joe Mixon return and we'll see what happens. But yeah, all in all, great week. We got to see the Hall of Fame game is cut short. That's unfortunate. In some ways, in other ways, probably better. You know, the Texans are already playing extra preseason football. It feels like we're in 2008 again, playing 4 preseason games. Not too mad that got cut short, as much as I do love watching the Texans play football, even if it is a meaningless football game in some ways. But excited for week 1 of the preseason. Like you said, seeing the ones. We'll get right into it. What are you most looking forward to with the ones? Is there a specific position battle that's going on where you're thinking I need to see the starter here, who they perceive as the starter, and then how the backup does, or what are you looking forward to?
I'm really just looking forward to seeing everything we've seen in the preseason translate to pads and on the field. We've seen them working out in different various functions. We've seen CJ to Steph's in training camp. We've seen CJ to Tank, Nico. I just want to see it on the field, against some other defense other than the Houston Texans. For me, I feel like that's when it's real, okay? Training camp looks great. Off-season stuff looks great. When you finally get it against another team, in between the lines, that's where it's at.
Yeah, and I would say against the Patriots last preseason when Tank Dell made that really impressive touchdown catch, that was probably the first moment where I was everyone makes a little bit too big of a deal about the preseason in some ways, but that was my moment where I was maybe Tank Dell could really be it. And it turned out to be true. Tank Dell is a truly excellent wide receiver, definitely better than a 3rd-round pick, but to each their own. All the teams that passed up on him are probably a little frustrated right now. But I think what I'm looking forward to is probably Kamari Lassiter. I know that we've had a lot of discussions about who's the starter, who isn't. It's evident by holding him out of the Hall of Fame game, in my opinion, that he is the starter in the team's eyes. I don't know how much competition he's actually facing for that position, but I'm interested to see how long they play him, who they're going to play right after him, who's his most direct competition, which I believe to be still to this day Jeff Okudah. But that's what I'm interested to see. Another talking point, we talked earlier in the week about the receiver room and who we view. So I'm interested to see how long they run the ones, if at all. And then once again, I mean, I know that Slowick's system doesn't really worry about numbers on the back, but I'm interested to see where the target share goes and how quickly each player comes in, which wide receiver from the depth comes in first and where they play in relief of the starters, if they do in fact play. That being said, how do you feel about Joe Mixon's return if it does happen? Do you think that the Texans will run him a lot? And what would you be looking for from Mixon?
For me, I need him to be healthy. I don't care. I mean, he's put a body of work together, his career in the NFL, that I don't care what he does in a preseason game as much as you just need him to be 100% healthy. I think what we saw from the 2 and 3 the Hall of Fame game would be enough for me. Joe Mixon's going to be able to hop into this offense And as long as the terminology is good and he's good with the playbook, I think be just fine. The fact that he needs to get like so much run for me, I don't know. To be honest, I'd rather they hold him out as long as they have to until whatever this that he's been dealing with the last couple of weeks is out of his system.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that makes sense. I don't even know if they play him. I even if he's healthy, I don't know if I would even put him on the field, especially with the questions that you have about the running back room with Cam Akers. I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans tried Cam Akers out there first, or Dameon Pierce, some combination of those. Because if they're trending towards keeping Cam Akers on the roster, I think he's clearly RB3, which would mean that they would be confirming that in my eyes if they put Pierce and then Akers. The order of operations is something that probably doesn't matter. Maybe does. We're definitely going to make a big deal of it regardless of if it does or doesn't. We talked about tight end last week, and so obviously it's looking like a 3-man race. I don't know if we'll see a lot of the starters. I don't even know if Dalton Schultz will touch the field, honest. Maybe for like a drive. But looking at that room, how do you think that, so with Cade Stover's performance last week, do you think that there's reason to believe that maybe the Texans could view him as a potential to take over tight end 2? Do you think that's locked in with Brevin Jordan? And then as far as the depth goes, do you think that there's any players on this roster outside of the 3 at tight end that could possibly push to make a 4th tight end on the roster?
I mean, before Tegan Toriano's injury, he was going to make a case. He played fantastic in the Hall of Fame game. I saw a tweet that it was so perfectly put. TQ is the best until he's hurt. And then once he's hurt, you never see him again. Got some amazing stuff on tape, but then it always ends in some sort of injury. So I don't know. I don't know what happens in a couple weeks when he comes back, if there's enough time for him to make a case to be on this roster. It really feels like with all the other positions that we've talked about being so deep, that tight end is going to be a position where they won't necessarily carry too many. I don't know how you unseat Brevin Jordan if you're any of them. And I really think that Cade Stover being as close to CJ Stroud as he is, he's another guy that's going to be really hard to unseat. So it really looks like those 3 are the 3.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that, in the long term, we could see it become Cade Stover and Dalton Schultz. You could see it become Cade Stover and Brevin Jordan. It really depends. There could be a lot of churn in that room in the next season or two. But for the most part, I think I guess after the next 2 or 3 seasons, because Dalton Schultz and Cade Stover are pretty consistent, it's really about where Brevin Jordan's going. I think that keeping those 3 on the roster would be huge if the Texans can do it. And I think it's definitely the right move for CJ to give him all the weapons he needs, because you have 3 weapons at tight end. You have, it's looking like we're going to have 6 weapons at wide receiver at least. I don't know. It's going to be tough to tell who is making it at wide receiver, but the people that do are going to be top tier. So I'm excited to see that. Do you think now, so last week we didn't really talk about it much with the Danico Autry suspension because we expected it to be kind of a B-list defensive line, just the backups were running, so it didn't really matter. But now that we're looking at possibly seeing a drive of the starters on defense, how do you feel about Mario Edwards as Danico Autry's fill-in? And do you think it's possible that throughout the preseason, specifically in this game, that we could see the Texans find a reason to maybe bring in another player? I'm not talking about anyone in specific, but I think there's a lot of Texans fans that are talking about one specific player that could be the one that gets brought in if it's viewed as a need, if you know what I mean. But I don't know, how do you feel about it?
The short answer is D'Amico's got a phone call he can make. And if he makes that phone call, a certain individual who will not be named will show up. And I think if Mario Edwards is not cutting it and that's an issue, there's no reason not to pick up the phone.
There's no reason to settle. No? Okay.
No.
I think, who was it? Back when the Texans signed Tim Settle, Landry Locker literally tweeted, like, if anyone makes a Tim Settle joke, they're lame. And like 5 minutes prior, I had tweeted, like, wow, I guess the Texans are settling. So I guess I'm the lamest person on earth, but yeah, I guess Tim Settle is listed on the depth chart. I'm interested to see what the trend looks like. A lot of what's coming out of camp with the Texans draft pick Marcus Harris is that maybe he's a little undersized, and so we'll see how he can work against competition that is not his own team and what he looks like. But outside of that, I mean, the linebacker depth has been an issue, but we will get to see the starters. What are you interested to see from the starters at linebacker? And what would make you feel better about the depth at linebacker, I guess?
I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, those guys have to be better than the 2s and the 3s were last time.
Yeah, 100%. Now, kind of shifting gears here, is there anyone in specific on the Steelers that you think you're interested to see, or any position battles that you're looking at on that end that are interesting relative to the Texans in this game?
No, not really. It's just going to be how we perform. I mean, that's a really good defense. So the ones against the ones, you're kind of going to see, okay, what the offensive line did with TJ Watt, what they did with that secondary. So that's really the battles that you want to see. Outside of that, I don't know.
I think QB1 is like a fun battle there in Pittsburgh. Are we going to see Russell Wilson, or are we going to see Justin Fields? It's looking like Justin Fields is legitimately challenging for the position with Russell Wilson injured. And honestly, I'm interested to see it because as if you've listened to the podcast for any amount of time, as you know, I'm not the biggest Justin Fields fan. So I'd love to see the Texans, maybe shut down his chances of being the starter in the preseason by exposing him. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. Another one for me personally, from a fantasy football perspective, is Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. I think that the tide is turning to where Jaylen Warren is being looked at more. If it's like 50-50, it's really 60-40. Like, I think that there was a point last season where they were like, yeah, Najee, you're cool. We spent a high draft pick on you, but maybe Jalen's the move. And I don't like that because I got Najee Harris in my dynasty league, and that's a tough commodity to move. Now that's
I don't know.
A question.
In a league now where you need more than one, I don't see any reason to mess with that. I think those guys are very good at spelling each other. Who starts, who doesn't start. I think as long as they both get the same amount of carries, you're going to get the same amount of production. And I think in Pittsburgh, they would probably say the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm banking on, because I think that it'd be tough to trade him for a better running back without surrendering some receivers. And my receiver depth in that league is just simply not great, especially with the D-Hop injury. Imagine that. I have D-Hop on my best fantasy team. That was part of a playoff push that would have resulted in a championship had I made the right waiver wire moves in the semifinals. That was the year that DeMar Hamlin died on the field and came back to life. So that was championship week, I want to say. I was in the third place game because I don't know how to make good decisions on the waiver wire. You want to know that story? Here, I'll tell that story because I think we have time.
Not.
We don't?
No, I was supposed to be gone 2 minutes ago.
Sorry. I'll save that one for another time. But Tom, I mean, I don't know. We spent a lot of time talking about this. What is your? We'll end on this. What is your one big observation, big thing that you want to see from the Texans in this preseason game?
You mentioned it. It's the cornerback room. That's going to be probably okay. Kamari's one. Now we need to see it. If Kamari shines, then obviously the right move. If Kamari struggles and then Okudah plays well, now you have that camp battle that you're kind of looking for. I get it. You want to instill confidence in your young guy. You want to push all the right buttons, but maybe, just maybe, there's more of a competition there than what some people are making it, because I know the fan base clearly has decided Kamari's the locksmith, which he is, and he's CB2, and leave it alone.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think I would honestly, I'm just going to expand your answer out to the secondary. I think on top of what you said, I'm interested to see if the starters are really that good. And, I want to see if the Texans, when they send the drastic difference between it, I want to see the starters do really well. And then when the Texans roll out the second stringers, I want to see if it's still as drastic of a difference, and if it kind of alerts the Texans that maybe they should raise their offer on Justin Simmons. So I'll leave it at that. We're going to do this. It's a short one. It's a preseason game. I don't know. Like, we're really still talking about the same stuff. This is, at the end of the day, I want to see who's going to start, who's going to make this 53-man roster. We'll probably still continue to have these same conversations at least 6 more times before the regular season starts, and then our previews and recaps will be more focused on winning and losing and implications ultimately over the course of the season. But yeah, I don't know. Tom, do you have anything else to add before we bring this thing to a close? It'd be a nice short preview.
I think you said it perfectly. Obviously, we're going to be able to take the data we get from this game and turn around and go, okay, here's our linebacker room. Here's our secondary. This looks better. This feels better. And then go from there. The season's just getting closer, and I'm looking forward to day one.
All right, sweet. Well, this has been the Bullpen. It's been a short preview, but it's also a short week, and it's also the preseason. So don't blame us. Blame where we're at right now. But hey, football's back. All right. Thanks for watching. As always, I'm James Roy. You can find me at M1 Texans Fan and at James Roy NFL. Tom is at Third Coast Tom on X, which is what he calls it. That is the only terminology that he uses. He does not believe in misnaming the app that Elon has so aptly named. No, I'm just kidding. He calls it Twitter. And then on Instagram, he is at TCTom1. Those are the best places to keep up with what's going on with the podcast. If you're watching this, you can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts at. And if you're listening to it, you can watch it on YouTube if you want. The handle would be at James Roy NFL if you want to find that. That's the quickest way to find it. Thanks for tuning in. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.
Take the handoff. Stroud looking.